Hello! In this video we'll be heading to Nebraska City from Winterset, Iowa, but first we'll be completing the Iowa section of the Mormon Trail that began in Nauvoo, Illinois. If you missed that video, I'll link it in the info box below. I was disappointed because when planning my route, I realized there are several Mormon trail stops in Iowa that I wouldn't be able to navigate easily. So I've omitted these from my itinerary. This is mostly due to their locations and my traveling in an RV. But I encourage you adventurers out there with more mobile vehicles to visit these sites. If you can download the National Park Service's Historic Trails Auto Tour Route Interpretive Guide, look for the guide that is specific to the Mormon Pioneer Trail, because there are many of these guides for different trails, and check these places out for yourself. Armchair travelers can go on the National Park website, I'm looking for my resources, and actually view the tour there. If you're a hands-on person like me, I picked up resources for the trails at the Archway Visitor Center in Kearney, Nebraska, completely free. These are excellent resources with their own accompanying maps. So this is the one for the Mormon Trail that comes right in the resource. So we'll be leaving Winterset and heading first to the small city of Lewis, Iowa. I say small because Lewis has a population of 357. This is where the Mormons crossed the East Nishnabotna River and met the Potawatomi. I chose this location as my last stop in Iowa before connecting with the Mormon Trail because it's also located very near the Hitchcock House, which is known for being a stop on the Underground Railroad. And this was a must-see site for me, and I couldn't pass it up. I just want to let you know that if you use the National Parks map or the guide I referenced, this stop near Lewis isn't listed on the parks map, but it is an official stop on the Mormon Trail. Brigham Young's Vanguard Company camped the evening of June 7, 1846 at Pleasant Valley, about 5 miles southeast of present-day Lewis, Iowa. The following morning, the wagons started northwestward past present-day Cold Springs State Park, where a deep spring-fed creek then existed, instead of the lake found there today. Researchers have determined that Young's Vanguard Company, which means they were the first, crossed about a mile from the park, but the later exodus out of Nauvoo in spring 1846 likely drove directly through Cold Springs. That conclusion is supported by the presence of wagon swales that emerge from the park to cross a privately owned field west of the park's camping loop. The 1846 Vanguard wagons continued north through the future town site of Lewis and turned west to cross the East Nishnabotna River over a bridge built by a crew of Mormon workmen. By the 1850s, ferries and a toll bridge served traffic at the crossing, then known as Mormon Crossing. A ferryman's home from the mid-1850s still stands near the former river channel on Minnesota Street and Nishna Valley Road, about a quarter-mile west of Lewis. In 1856 through 1857, Mormon handcart brigades trudged past the cabin to ford the East Nishnabotna, a short distance to the north. Once on the west side of the river, immigrants approached the Potawatomi, Ottawa, Chippewa Indian village of Mee-Aw-Mees. Apologies if I butchered that. This large village stood on a ridge about a mile northwest of Cold Springs State Park. Mormon pioneer John D. Lee wrote in his journal that the village comprised 50 wigwams. By 1848, when 15 late departing Nauvoo families reached this same place, they found the village abandoned. Its occupants had been removed by the U.S. government. These Latter-day Saints halted and overwintered at the village, sheltering in the emptied wigwams. A wayside exhibit that tells of the Native Americans who lived here could be viewed at historic Hitchcock House. However, I never was able to find the exhibit there. Here I am driving across the East Nishnabotna River. It's obviously much easier nowadays. Apologies for the bugs on the windshield. The Hitchcock House, a National Historic Landmark, sits on a beautiful promontory overlooking a big bend in the East Nishnabotna River. The house is built of brown sandstone taken from Jester's Quarry, which is still visible near the road going south out of Lewis. The two-story structure measures 30 by 40 feet, and the walls average 20 inches in thickness. Wood used in construction is walnut and oak that was milled locally. The house has a full basement with a large stone fireplace, and the basement is accessible from the kitchen and by an outside entrance. Originally, it is thought that a hinged cupboard separated the two rooms in the basement. To gain access to the secret room, parts or all of the cabinet may have swung open. Here, fugitive slaves would have hidden in times of danger or rested from their long journey from Kansas Territory. No records remain of any slaves coming through the house or how they were concealed. It was a federal offense to shield or aid fugitive slaves. During my visit to the area, I was struck by how the history of the United States is defined by profound struggles for freedom, often highlighted by acts of compassion and solidarity. Reverend Hitchcock's efforts to shelter runaway slaves in his home, along with the abandoned Native American village that provided winter refuge for Mormon pilgrims, serve as powerful reminders of our deeply interconnected humanity. These stories reinforce the importance of showing empathy in times of adversity, illustrating how kindness can bridge divides and foster resilience. What do you think? Nebraska City is connected with the Oregon Trail because of the Lewis and Clark expedition and its influence on creating the Oregon Trail. I find the mass immigration to the western U.S. to be a fascinating and thought-provoking chapter in American history. Most Americans are probably aware of the Oregon Trail to some degree, but in case you're unfamiliar, the trail was a major route used by pioneers traveling west to settle in the Oregon Territory. This occurred during the mid-1800s. The trail spans approximately 2,170 miles from Missouri to Oregon. Eventually, there were several cutoffs with different starting and ending locations along the trail. These were the Mormon Trail, the California Trail, and the Bozeman Trails. Initially, there was no rail route west, so one had to travel by horse, wagon, or foot. This is why travelers along the trail are often referred to as overlanders. Lewis and Clark entered the story years before there was even a trail west. The Lewis and Clark expedition, also called the Corps of Discovery, ran from 1804 to 1806 and was commissioned by President Thomas Jefferson to explore the newly acquired Louisiana Territory. Jefferson wanted to find a trade route to the Pacific Ocean. Lewis and Clark's expedition began in St. Louis, traveling up the Missouri River and passing through what is now Nebraska City. There are several key connections between the Oregon Trail and the Lewis and Clark expedition. primarily the information gathered by the Corps of Discovery, which helped to shape the routes that would later be used by pioneers traveling west. Lewis and Clark's maps and notes provided a foundation for understanding the best mountain passes to take, what obstacles to avoid, and also the locations of crucial water sources on the route west. Some of this information was also gathered from the Native Americans who had already been occupying the land for years. Once this knowledge was put into practice by a few brave and hardy travelers, the trail was set and facilitated the migration of thousands of settlers seeking new opportunities, land, and a better life in lands west of the Mississippi River. I feel I'd be leaving out a big part of the story if I didn't mention that this mass immigration west resulted in profound and often devastating changes for Native American tribes, leading to long-lasting consequences that are still felt today. I think it's important to acknowledge the historical injustice, reflect on privilege, and for me, taking personal action in small ways such as supporting Indigenous businesses or trying my best to be respectful when visiting Native American lands or cultural sites. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Please comment below. And the final stop today will be Nebraska City, which is situated along the Missouri River and served as a key supply point for travelers on the Oregon Trail. It was a bustling hub where pioneers could rest, resupply, and prepare for the challenging journey ahead. Fortunately, our journey will be much less challenging. So enough of me talking already. Let's hit the road. I was excited to start the Oregon Trail journey at the Missouri River Basin Lewis and Clark Visitor Center. This is a 12,000 square foot museum, and it sits on 79-acre bluff overlooking the Missouri River, so the property's beautiful. And I am a member of Harvest Hosts, so I was able to stay over in their parking lot, and I had the place to myself basically once they closed. So I visited the grounds, and of course I couldn't get in the buildings because they were closed, but once they opened the next day, I was right there. So it's really convenient. I'm not endorsing this, I just really enjoy using that Harvest Host membership. So if you're interested, I'll put a little more information in the more info down below. But anyway, the visitor center was fantastic. I highly recommend it. The first thing I noticed was the replica of the keel boat that's located just in front of the visitor center, and this is an amazing replica. It's part of the flotilla of boats that Lewis and Clark used, and this boat was the main vessel for transporting cargo, while they also had pirogues and canoes that were used for navigating smaller rivers and carrying crew members. Lewis and Clark's keel boat, which, by the way, they called the boat or barge, they never called it a keel boat. It was built as a galley in Pittsburgh in 1803 after detailed specifications by Meriwether Lewis. It could be propelled by oars, sails, poles, and tow lines, and the boat was the expedition's main vessel until the spring of 1805. At the time I visited, there was a replica in the process of being built of Fort Mandan, which was the name of the encampment which the Lewis and Clark expedition built for wintering over in 1804 and 1805. The encampment was located on the Missouri River, approximately 12 miles from the present-day site of Washburn, North Dakota. This Earth Lodge was one of my favorite exhibits at the museum. An Earth Lodge is a semi-subterranean building covered partially or completely with earth, best known from the Native American cultures of the Great Plains and eastern woodlands. Most earth lodges are circular in construction with a dome-like roof, often with a central or slightly offset smoke hole at the apex of the dome. There are 4 trails on the museum grounds. There's the Earth Lodge Trail, the Limestone Bluff Trail, the River Overlook Trail, and the Birding Trail. And the one that overlooks the river is the one that I'm showing here. It was beautiful. Inside the museum were some fantastic exhibits. These were designed with the expert advice of the University of Nebraska's Professor Dr. Gary Moulton, the nation's definitive scholar on the Lewis and Clark journals, who served as the center's first in-residence scholar. So very informed, and I would love to bring my grandchildren here because there were a lot of fun interactive exhibits for the kiddos. One of the exhibits about the animals mentioned that Lewis and Clark recorded 122 animals new to science in their journals, and several of these were full-sized in the museum. There was a buffalo, a black bear and her cub, and some others. A grizzly bear that growls, that was another one that was kind of interesting. And then the medical display I thought was fascinating too. This is a perspective from the upper level looking down into a 30-foot long cutaway model of one of the white pirogues, and it was equipped with oars
allowing you to feel the strength it took to row the boat loaded with cargo upstream. Of all the species of trees found along the route of the Lewis and Clark expedition, none contributed more to the success of the Corps than the cottonwood. The men of the expedition quickly learned from the native peoples the many different ways in which cottonwoods helped in everyday life. On the lower level, embedded in the museum's floor, is this huge map that was drawn by William Clark of their track across the western portion of North America from the Mississippi to the Pacific Ocean. It's hard to see because this was so large I couldn't fit it in the screen, but it gives you an idea. Drop a comment if you visited any of the sites along the Lewis and Clark expedition route. And also, if you are enjoying this content, please subscribe. Until next time.